This is the machine that gave mankind the freedom of the skies. Forget the plane. This machine can go places and do things no plane can. The helicopter is the ultimate flying machine. The Lynx, the fastest helicopter in the world. In 1988, the Lynx tore up the record books. Over 2 10-mile runs, it clocked an incredible speed of 249 miles per hour. It can fly sideways and backwards at 60 miles per hour, and even upside down. The Chopper is the most versatile, spectacular flyer ever invented. The Blue Eagles is the aerobatic display team of the British Army. A hand-picked group of top pilots demonstrate the amazing capabilities of their helicopters in stunning synchronized displays, designed to push both man and machine close to their limits. The team leader coordinates all 5 choppers in each precision maneuver.
Each maneuver is carefully calculated. You're at the right speed, you're at the right height. You think about where the wind is coming from. And the idea is if you go in at 100 knots, 200 feet, you come out in the opposite direction, 100 knots, 200 feet. You're not even really thinking about what your hands and feet are doing, it's coming naturally. You're spending most of your time looking outside the cockpit, making sure that you're in the right place in the rest of the display.
One of the most dangerous maneuvers is the vertical diamond.
Vertical diamond. The Lynx which passes underneath me is going straight through my downwash. So he gets a bit of a bump as he goes through. Having a Lynx bearing down on you at 120 miles an hour, and just before it goes through, you sort of ask yourself that question, I wonder if it's going to go through. Total waste of time. Too late by then anyway.
There we go.
These aerobatic displays test both pilots and technology, pushing the potential of the helicopter to new extremes.
Cross over brakes, cross over brakes, go!
The Lynx is the star of the show. To achieve this agility and the world's speed record, it's fitted with the most advanced composite rotor blades ever designed. One of the biggest problems of rotary flight is the turbulence produced at the tip of each rotor blade. The tips rotate at 500 miles per hour. This, combined with the high forward speed of the helicopter, can generate violent flexing of conventional rotor blades. To reduce the turbulence, the manufacturers developed an entirely new design. Molded from composite materials, the swept-back tip works like the delta wing shape of a supersonic jet. The performance of the rotor blades at high speed is dramatically improved. Using composite materials, engineers are now able to create increasingly sophisticated rotor blade designs and continue to push the limits for these extraordinary flying machines. In Arizona, one former Army chopper pilot has found a new use for his abilities. Harry Robertson is a rancher and helicopter safety expert. He now uses his precision flying skills on his cattle ranch.
Aircraft have been my life, and I've been fascinated and intrigued by all of them. But a helicopter has the uniqueness that it can do many of the things that regular airplanes can do. But it can also stop on a dime and set it down in small spaces. So it's a very unique aircraft. We have about 200 miles of fence on the ranch. We have to have an awareness of its condition. We have to know where the cattle are all the time. And if I didn't use the helicopter and I used just an individual on a horse, it could take him days to do that. But in the helicopter, in just a matter of minutes, I can locate the herds.
Once Harry has found the cattle, herding them across the ranch is as demanding as flying a military mission.
The herding that I do here is not even effective unless you get maybe 6, 8, 10 feet above the ground. You're flying very slowly. You're essentially in a hover, and you move right along with them. We try to not scare them. We try to not make them break into a run, if you will, because they could get injured.
The ability to hover and fly at very low speed is what makes the chopper such a versatile machine. Flying like this requires Harry's maximum concentration.
A helicopter is basically unstable, and you let go of the controls and it'll do anything. So you have to continually balance on top of the ball, if you will, or play the pendulum bit, where you're always balancing below the blades. But it's challenging. But aside from all that, it really does what I want it to do. It lets us accomplish an enormous amount of work in a very short period of time. And besides all that, it's fun to fly.
To master the three-dimensional freedom of the helicopter, Harry uses precise coordination of hands and feet. His left hand operates the collective lever, which controls lift. Raise it and the aircraft rises. His right hand works the cyclic control. Similar to the joystick on a plane, it controls movement forwards, backwards, and sideways.
Be very careful backing it up that we don't stick our stinger or the tail rotor in the ground.
His feet operate the tail rotor, which spins the helicopter round in either direction. Harry must work all three controls simultaneously to fly the aircraft safely. The collective and the cyclic controls change the position and the angle of the rotor blades. The complex mechanisms they control at the center of the blades allow the helicopter to hover or fly in any direction. It is a masterpiece of modern engineering. It's the military which has developed the helicopter to its ultimate levels of sophistication. This is the Apache. Top speed 210 miles per hour. Range 800 miles. With the strike capacity of 20 tanks. The Apache is one of the deadliest machines on the planet.
We're
This is the U.S. Army's AH-64A Apache helicopter, the #1 attack helicopter in the world today. Standard layout, long, narrow fuselage, pilot, co-pilot, tandem, wings to carry wing stores, and then some type of either machine gun or automatic cannon under the nose of the aircraft.
The Apache is packed with some of the most lethal weaponry ever invented. Its single purpose, seek and destroy.
The Hellfire missile can destroy any known armored target out there up to a range of 8 kilometers. Designated, guided by laser, the gunner puts a laser spot onto a target. The missile seeker sees that laser spot, and wherever that laser spot is, when the missile's fired, that's where the missile's going to go.
Bad weather and darkness are no obstacle. The Apache has an amazing all-weather night and day vision system. The pilot's helmet is fitted with a head-up display monocle that feeds his right eye with infrared images from sensors on the nose of the helicopter.
The co-pilot gunner in the front seat is able to locate targets at night using the infrared side, and in the daytime, the day TV, 127 power optics, which allows us to look at a great distance across the battlefield, find the target, engage and destroy the target.
In the cockpit, an array of invisible laser beams detects the slightest movement of the pilot's head, and the external sensors immediately move to match.
Now, because of that, the whole time your head was offset to the left just slightly.
Student pilots train by day with the rear cockpit blacked out, forcing them to use the night vision system.
A couple of hovering turns. Just do it slowly. Just don't move the flight controls. Keep your eye on that line of sight reticle and that central symbology while you're turning your head. There you go. Remember that the axis
It's a challenge. The pilot must keep his left eye on the cockpit instruments and his right eye on the infrared image.
Concentrate on not moving your arm, because that's all you've done is whenever you turn your head.
Right now I'm just having problems trying to see what's going on in the outside world and interpreting all the information that you have coming into this eye with the picture and the symbology, and trying to make control movements based on what I'm getting into that eye.
Over the next 12 weeks, the new pilots will learn to tame the raw power and abilities of the Apache.
It's a very awesome aircraft because of the power and maneuverability that it has. It's like about the fastest roller coaster you've ever been on, and multiply that by about 2 or 3, and that's what it's like to get in this thing the first time and fly it.
The unique abilities of the chopper to take off and land almost anywhere, to carry troops and weapons quickly to exactly where they are needed, have given it a special place in the history of warfare. The U.S. Army bought the first ever mass-produced helicopters. The Bell 47 became famous in Korea, where the MASH units used them to transport wounded soldiers back from the front line. In Vietnam, the chopper came of age. The Bell Huey, a troop transporter and gunship, remains the lasting image of the jungle war. Near the end of the Vietnam War, there came an entirely new and terrifying machine, the Cobra. Ultra-streamlined, super-fast, and armed to the teeth, the Cobra was the first of a new generation of choppers designed exclusively for an attack role. Helicopters have become the deadliest weapons in any Army's strike force. This is the Tiger, Europe's answer to the Apache. It's a dual-engine helicopter with immense power and unbelievable agility. Choppers like the Tiger and the Lynx are designed to have such great speed and power for one simple reason: survival. In the technological warfare of the modern battlefield, avoiding detection is the #1 priority.
To survive on the modern battlefield, you have to keep yourself out of radar detection. And to do that, you have to fly low to the ground, in and around obstacles. We fly what we call nap of the earth, which is we try to get as close to the ground as we can. We'll fly sometimes as fast as 140 knots, 5 feet off the ground in open areas.
Nap of the Earth flying allows attack helicopters to literally sneak up on the enemy. At this low height, there is no margin for error. But the attack choppers are only one part of the armory. The Kiowa Warrior is the modern light cavalry. It's fast and maneuverable, crammed full of state-of-the-art reconnaissance electronics.
Fixed wing, high supply. Fixed wing, stand supply.
It's designed around a unique mast-mounted vision system. This helicopter is the eyes and ears of the Army.
This is the mast-mounted sight, ET we call it because it looks kind of like a face. Television is here, infrared is here. It has a left and right range of motion 190 degrees.
This vision system's power and precision allow the Kiowas to track the enemy stealthily from long range. It can detect and isolate targets up to 5 miles away.
Typically, reconnaissance is characterized by a lot of very slow nap of the earth flying and hovering for a long time in a concealed position. And we can do that in a way that maintains our stealth by hovering behind some trees, a ridge line, and only exposing the mast-mounted sight above the terrain. Take a long, hard, sneaky look at the bad guys, and then develop the situation from there. It's a game of hide and seek, really.
When the targets have been located by the Kiowas, their positions are transmitted back, and the heavy brigade moves in. The Apaches stealthily take up their positions, hunters stalking their unsuspecting prey. Their first weapon is surprise. When the signal is given, they unmask from below the tree line in lethal unison and unleash their awesome destructive force. Within seconds, a fully armed Apache can destroy up to 16 tanks at a range of 5 miles. The Army helicopter is a machine of the land, not the sky. It follows the contours of the land as a ground unit would, day or night, whatever the weather, with deadly speed and stealth. The idea of the rotating wing was developed thousands of years ago in ancient China. The Chinese top is a simple hand-powered toy, the first helicopter. But engines that were powerful enough for manned rotary flight only emerged in the early 20th century. Even then, engine power alone was not enough. Helicopters have a fundamental problem. As the engine spins the rotor blades, it also tries to spin the entire body of the helicopter in the opposite direction. This rotational force is called torque. Most modern helicopters use a small tail rotor to counter this effect, to push in the opposite direction of the torque. Without the tail rotor, the body of the helicopter would spin out of control. A terrifying example of what can happen if the tail rotor fails was caught on camera by a tourist. But the world's first practical helicopter countered the torque problem in a totally different way. The Focke-Wulf 61 had two main rotors turning in opposite directions. The torque from each one canceled the other out. In America, Russian immigrant Igor Sikorsky was experimenting with tail rotors. His first success, the VS-300, used three. Sikorsky was the first to develop the modern lever and stick control system for a single main rotor. And 3 years later, in 1942, he finally perfected a single tail rotor design, creating the classic helicopter configuration of today. He launched a huge publicity campaign throughout America, promoting the helicopter as the family car of the future.
The missus strolls out to get the groceries out of the luggage basket. Watch this. Here is one of the most dramatic examples of the helicopter's ability to operate in restricted space.
But Sikorsky had competition. His greatest rival, Arthur Young, was still flying models. But it was Young's ingenious designs that won the financial backing of businessman Larry Bell. In the late 40s, Bell Helicopter found commercial success with the Bell 47. With its famous bubble cockpit, it became extremely popular. Over 10,000 were built. Other designers started looking for a way into this new industry. One clever new approach was the Syncropter. It had two main rotors, slightly offset and synchronized so they could intermesh. That same design is still in use today. The K-Max is nicknamed the aerial truck. It uses the Syncropter configuration on a small, light airframe. With no tail rotor, all the power can be directed into vertical lift. The result is a helicopter with great lifting capability. By far the most popular alternative to the tail rotor is the tandem configuration, two main rotors at front and back of a long fuselage. The most famous example is the Chinook. It's the world's most efficient heavy lifter, capable of carrying over twice its own weight. In just a few decades, helicopters have evolved into an incredible diversity of useful machines. An extraordinary alternative approach to the conventional helicopter is the autogyro. It's a spectacular flyer which uses unpowered rotor blades. Forward thrust comes from a rear propeller. As the craft moves forward, the rotor blades are turned by the air passing through them, like windmill blades. As they turn, they generate lift and the machine flies. An autogyro needs forward speed to keep the rotors turning and stay in the air. But it's extremely agile and can take off and land almost anywhere. The principle behind the autogyro is a key safety feature on all true helicopters. As long as the rotor blades keep turning, a helicopter can glide safely to the ground, even if it loses power.
I think the general perception is that helicopters are a dangerous machine to operate and to be involved with. However, it's a very safe machine. There's not really anything that causes a problem that we can't get out of.
The trainee Navy pilot of this Gazelle helicopter is about to face every pilot's nightmare: total engine failure.
That's good. Engine is now shut down. We are committed.
When the engine fails, the most important thing that the pilot has to do is to lower the collective immediately. The blade speed, or the NR as we call it, will decay to a catastrophic level and we will not be able to recover it.
They're established in auto rotation. It's looking well ahead.
The powerless rotor blades keep spinning, but the helicopter plummets at 30 feet per second.
Nose coming up and putting in an S-turn.
There's nothing we can do to stop the aircraft going down. However, we can manoeuvre the aircraft towards a suitable landing area, and we can control the speed.
Yes, we are going to make it. Watching the speed now.
From about 150 feet, we then start what we call a flare. Using the cyclic, we raise the nose of the aircraft, or the speed of the rotors increases, which we can then use to cushion with a collective, cushion onto the ground, and hopefully a nice gentle landing.
Holding straight. And there we go, lever fully down, controls are central.
The helicopter's ability to glide with no power is called auto-rotation. Like the autogyro, the air rushing through the rotor blades keeps them spinning, and this generates just enough lift to survive the rapid descent.
The best analogy is the sycamore seed principle. We've seen a sycamore seed dropped, it starts to rotate and glides down at a much slower rate than it would if it were just a normal seed.
But just as the seed has to be moving before it can start to rotate, auto-rotation can only start if the helicopter is moving. To be able to make a safe auto-rotation landing, this helicopter either needs to be at least 100 feet up or flying at a minimum of 30 knots. Pilots chillingly refer to these minimum heights and speeds as the dead man's curve. Fly below these limits, and an emergency landing becomes impossible. But when modern helicopters do crash, there is still a good chance of survival. In the 60s, engineers began intensive research into new technologies that might help passengers and pilots survive. They developed impact-absorbent body shells and crash-proof seats. And to reduce the risk of fire, they developed rubber fuel tanks designed to self-seal if they ruptured. Critical mechanical components on military aircraft were re-engineered to withstand direct hits from bullets. Manufacturers even experimented with ejection seats. Pilots couldn't be ejected through turning rotor blades, so explosive bolts were fired to release each blade. But the systems were expensive and unreliable, so the designs were never incorporated into production helicopters. Los Angeles, 1 a.m. While the city sleeps, the criminals do not. 70% of the city's crimes are committed at night. The police chopper is a vital weapon in the fight against crime. It's the eye in the sky, providing vital backup for the officers on the street.
We send out one-man police cars at night, knowing that the helicopter's above them, we can literally lower the helicopter down to within 50 feet. So the officer knows that he has a backup there no matter what the circumstances are.
To penetrate the darkness below them, the chopper uses a powerful spotlight. They call it the artificial sun. With light equivalent to 1 million domestic light bulbs, from 800 feet up, it can flood areas as large as a whole block. These choppers are also fitted with infrared systems. They detect heat, whether a human body, a running engine, or the family pet.
We can tell the officers if there's a vehicle leaving or if there's a person injured on the ground, if their house's windows are broken or the doors open, or if there are people fighting in the street. Does it appear to be dangerous? Does there appear to be somebody there with weapons? So as they approach the scene, we're answering questions that they're asking themselves.
35, 1022, 923. We found the owner.
But to fulfill his vital backup role, Ron Palmer must fly slow and low, right on the edge of the safety limits of his machine.
Most of the flying we do is right on the margin of the dead man's curve, and that's just the nature of our job.
Dangerously close to the limits, they provide air cover for the soldiers in the urban war below. They keep circling to make sure they have enough momentum for an emergency auto-rotation landing. They risk their lives, but the lives of the officers on the street are also at stake.
Probably the most important thing I say we do right now is we save as many police officers' lives as we can while we're in pursuits.
By day, the chopper is the fastest way to travel across the increasingly congested streets of major cities. More than 50 police choppers patrol the skies over the Los Angeles area.
826, the traffic is just by you to your left, 7 o'clock.
The megalopolis is approximately 13 to 15 million people living in a very small area. Congestion is probably our biggest problem here, driving on the streets. The helicopter flies line of sight. We don't have to follow streets, so we can virtually go anywhere and do almost anything that a patrol car can, and we can do it within seconds.
10-4, 44-311, 312, follow on 415 male at 691. Subject by the name of Bart. He's a male white. He started attacking the informant. Her son tried to stop him, and Denny 242, the son.
But there are major problems with such low-level flying over urban areas. Helicopters are notoriously noisy, and the tail rotor can be a serious hazard if a landing has to be made in a crowded street. So the police here are trying out a new design. This is a NOTAR helicopter, short for no tail rotor. Instead, it uses a powerful internal fan, which drives air down through the tail boom to counteract the torque effect without using exposed rotor blades.
This area of the tail boom is where the fan is placed. The fan sucks in air through the vent up there, forcing air down through the tail boom. There are these grooves in the tail boom which help the anti-torque, which is what the tail boom is for. The air is then forced down through the tail section here and is allowed to exhaust out the back here. This is just clean ambient air that comes out here. It's very safe. You can put your hand or face up here. As this rotates, it forces the helicopter to turn, which the propellers on other helicopters would be doing.
The helicopter changes direction by rotating the tail nozzle opening, which Ron controls with the pedals, just like a conventional chopper. With no rotating blades at the rear of the helicopter, it's much safer to land in urban areas and much quieter. The helicopter has transformed policing in the cities and made them safer places to live. The helicopter is the only type of aircraft that has saved more lives than it has lost, and most of those lives have been saved at sea. The classic search and rescue helicopter is the Sea King. In an emergency, it is capable of floating on the water.
The aircraft is designed to work up to a maximum range of approximately 200 miles, and that depends primarily on the weather conditions, specifically the wind. So far this year, we've had 180 rescues. It can range from cliff fallers, which is probably one of the highest portion of our rescues, to children being blown out to sea.
0193, copy. Request the call sign of the aircraft marking position.
The rescue teams train constantly. On this mission, they will retrieve stranded pilots from the sea. The pilot must fly low. He positions the nose of the helicopter into the wind to gain as much extra lift from the rotor blades as possible. If either of the Sea King's two engines fails now, the chopper will drop into the sea.
We try and maintain a power margin for safety reasons. There are occasions, however, when you have to forego the luxury of a safety margin in order to effect the rescue quickly.
To rescue the stranded pilots, the diver attaches a line to the life raft. He steadies the line from below as the survivors are winched up. An automatic radar system holds the aircraft at constant height, while the pilot uses all his skill to maintain precise position over the raft. The rescue teams constantly put their own lives at risk to save others. They undergo rigorous training to save their own lives in impossible conditions. This helicopter crash simulator helps train the crews in the worst possible scenario, ditching at night in ice-cold waters with the chopper rolling over as it hits the water. In a real crash, the disoriented crew would have just seconds to escape alive. But the most extreme challenges faced by the Sea King crews are not out at sea, but along the coastline. Every year, hundreds of people become stranded on the high, jagged cliffs of the English coast. The crew begins each rescue with a careful survey of the cliffs around the victim. A cliff walker is stranded out of sight on the rocks below. This is a dangerous situation for the helicopter. The crew's first responsibility is to plan an escape route in case of engine failure.
Land on top of the field? Yeah, we will do. We'll just move forward down if you're happy. Right, okay. Okay, our flyaway option is on the nose, directly to the field on top. Okay. We'll walk this side of those rocks, straight down to there. Right.
Next, the winch operator plans the route down.
The diver and myself will have a chat. We'll talk about which route he's going to take down the cliff to get to the casualty, and then how we're going to recover the casualty.
From the authority aft, please.
During the actual rescue phase, the pilot hands over command to the winch operator, who has the best view down. He tells the pilot precisely where he needs the Sea King positioned.
Easy, steady, good position.
It takes tremendous skill. The pilot may have to fly as close as 2 feet from the cliff.
When you're hovering in the close vicinity of a cliff, the power that you require to hover invariably is quite high. The risk is updrafts and downdrafts, large eddies and currents that are caused by the wind.
The winchman must keep the pressure on the wire constant during the descent. With 200 feet of wire played out, 1 inch of movement at the top could equate to 10 or 12 feet of movement at the bottom, which could swing the rescuer into the cliff face. With the victim safely on the wire, the pilot carefully maneuvers the helicopter away from the cliffs.
You could have 200 foot of wire out, so you don't want to raise the winch to get the casualty in the dive room at 200 feet. So what we do is the aircraft trickles forward at a few knots and starts descending whilst I'm raising the winch. And then we can keep them about 10 to 15 feet above the sea as the aircraft comes down to meet them. And we'll recover them into the aircraft about 30 feet.
Mission accomplished. But this crew has to be prepared to perform rescues in any conditions, at night, in fog, or in storm force winds. Even with the tremendous versatility of the Sea King, these crews risk their lives on every mission to save the lives of others. The military helicopters of tomorrow will be faster and more deadly than anything that has gone before. This Sikorsky S-76 troop carrier is fitted with a special new fantail design. The fantail has achieved spectacular results in speed and agility tests, including a sideways speed of 70 miles per hour. The new fantail is just one part of a totally new breed of chopper. Meet Comanche, the world's first stealthy helicopter. This is the shape of things to come. Its composite body shell is almost totally non-reflective to radar, light, and infrared. Despite its size, its radar signature is no greater than that of a large bird. Everything is internal, including retractable weapons. The Comanche is still being tested. A totally new military helicopter like this takes decades to develop. But its potential is enormous, and it already has its own squadron of pilots training on simulators to explore its unique capabilities. In virtual war games, Comanche can get 3 times closer to the action undetected than any existing helicopter. For some people, choppers serve a more peaceful purpose. For them, helicopters offer an astonishing opportunity to see their world as never before. In Arizona every year, thousands of people enjoy the flight of a lifetime over the greatest view on Earth. Before climbing aboard, every passenger is weighed. The computer works out a seating plan, so that the helicopter's center of gravity will be directly below the rotor head for a safe, smooth ride. In the cabin, each passenger wears noise reduction headsets. These electronically cancel out the sound of the rotors.
IBAB is part of the Grand Canyon National Park, which was established in 1919. The park was doubled in its size in 1975 by President Gerald Ford, and it now covers 1,904 square miles.
Even for the pilot, The wonder of the trip over the Grand Canyon never grows stale.
People are really excited about the canyon, and the scenery in the canyon's beautiful. When I break the rim, I've had people cry, and a couple of people propose marriage to each other, a couple celebrating a 50th wedding anniversary, and one woman spread her brother's ashes over the canyon. A lot of people have said they've been touched by God, and you know, every day it changes, which makes it fun for me. Every time I look at the canyon, it's amazing.
Dark-looking rock that runs all along the inner gorge. That's the Vishnu Schist, which is some of the oldest exposed rock on the planet Earth.
These helicopters make hundreds of flights over the canyon each day. Passengers may be willing to tolerate the chopper's noise, but some people on the ground are not so happy about it. Despite strict controls on flights, there are still complaints from the hikers below.
The government is trying to stop the flights over the canyon right now, which I think is a tragedy. There's so many people that can't hike the canyon, either disabled or elderly, that can't get into the canyon and see what they can see from the helicopter.
So the tour company decided to develop a quieter helicopter. Their starting point was an old Korean War troop transport, a Sikorsky S-55. It's a stable flyer with room for 9 passengers.
This is a 1950s helicopter that we've completely remanufactured and modified. We've added space-age materials, sound-reducing materials in the intake, in the exhaust silencer. We've also modified the rotor head from 3 blades to 5 blades to be able to turn the blades slower.
The new silencers and the slower-turning rotor blades have made the machine an amazing 50% quieter. They call it the Whisper Jet. And it's so quiet that if government noise restrictions are introduced in the canyon, it will be permitted to fly 5 times more flights than any of the existing helicopters. Thanks to machines like this, another generation of visitors will be able to enjoy the unrivaled freedom of the helicopter and marvel at the greatest view on Earth. Since the first helicopters, engineers have been trying to make them more like planes, combining their vertical takeoff abilities with the superior speed and range of a fixed-wing aircraft. After the invention of the jet engine, jet thrusters were added to the tips of the rotor blades. The tip jets fired up just before takeoff. In 1957, the Fairey Rotordyne achieved a helicopter world speed record of 191 miles per hour. At high speed, the tip jets were shut down, and the Rotordyne became an autogyro. The 60s saw the arrival of a new high-speed helicopter. Lockheed's military prototype was a helicopter with short airplane wings. Loaded with all the latest military hardware, the Cheyenne was designed as an ultra-high-speed attack aircraft. With an extra propeller at the back providing forward thrust, the Cheyenne could climb and dive more steeply than any previous helicopter. It had tremendous power and pushed the world helicopter speed record to a new level, 240 miles per hour. Unfortunately, a series of crashes put an end to the Cheyenne development program. The future of part plane, part chopper hybrids lay in a different direction. Instead of trying to turn choppers into planes, designers realized that they should turn airplanes into choppers. For takeoff and landing, this Bell tilt wing rotated its entire wing. This complex machine soon evolved into the tilt rotor, a simpler design where just the engines and propellers were rotated. The first tilt rotor to go into commercial production was the V-22 Osprey. It's used today by the Navy as a medium-range transport aircraft. The Osprey uses an innovative new rotor design short enough to fold back inside the wingspan of the aircraft. The Osprey takes off like a helicopter, and then as the aircraft gains speed, the rotors gradually tilt into a normal airplane position. Above 80 miles per hour, the rotors are locked into their horizontal position, and the wings provide 100% of the lift. The Osprey's success has led to the development of a 9-passenger civilian version, still at prototype stage. The aim is to transform city-to-city travel. It will take off and land in the heart of cities, slashing the trip times for travelers. Its airplane capability will make it faster and cheaper than any helicopter. This hybrid may be the transport of the future. But for the present, the chopper remains the lord of the skies.